I never told my wife's lover I built the show that made him untouchable. She tried to have me removed from my own set. I rewrote one line minutes before we went live. He opened the box. Inside were eviction papers and divorce documents. I told them their careers were over. The air inside Soundstage 7 always carried a taste I could never quite name. Ozone, mostly. Burnt circuits, overheated lights, and underneath it all, ambition. The kind that sticks to your throat if you breathe it long enough. I'd been breathing it for 11 years. Long enough to watch actors turn into icons, assistants turn into executives, and men far less capable than they believed become convinced they were indispensable. I was standing in the wings that night, same as always, dark jeans, a worn charcoal jacket, a notebook in my hand that looked like it belonged to someone who took notes for a living, not someone who built entire worlds from scratch. No one looked at me. They never did. To the crew, I was just Ethan Mercer, quiet, polite, the husband of Vanessa Hale, the woman currently running the floor like she owned the place. I never corrected that assumption. That was the point. Because the show they were about to broadcast to 10 million people, the one Vanessa took credit for in every interview, the one Julian Cross was about to crown himself king of, that show was mine. Every line, every arc, every breath of it, and in less than an hour, I was going to take it all back. The control room lights were dimmed to a low, surgical glow, just enough to see the boards, not enough to distract from the monitors. Rows of screens flickered in tight grids, each one showing a different angle of the same illusion. Living room set, fireplace, the box on the mantel, everything exactly where I had designed it to be. Live television has a different kind of gravity. You can feel it before anything starts, like the air is pulling forward, tightening around the moment that hasn't happened yet. I leaned against the back wall, half in shadow, sipping lukewarm black coffee that had been sitting out too long. It tasted burnt. It always did here. People moved faster in this room, spoke sharper, every word trimmed down to function, no wasted motion, no wasted breath. Vanessa stood near the center console, headset on, posture straight, voice calm, but carrying. She had learned how to fill space without raising her volume. It was one of the reasons people listened to her. She looked like she belonged here, that part, at least. I had gotten right. Julian was already on set, visible on the primary monitor. Perfectly lit. Perfectly framed. Every movement calibrated to land exactly where it needed to. I had written him that way, built him from silence and restraint, then gave him just enough fire to make audiences believe it was all his. He was good. Better than he had any right to be, given what he'd been handed before me. I didn't hate him for that, not yet. Someone brushed past me without looking. A production assistant carrying cue sheets. Another voice called out a timing check. Numbers echoed across the room. 30 minutes, 28, stand by, lighting, confirm audio levels. No one asked why I was there. No one ever did. To them, I was background, the quiet husband who liked to watch, the guy who didn't quite fit but never caused a problem. Easy to ignore. Easier to forget. I let them think that. Because invisibility, when you understand how to use it, isn't weakness. It's positioning. I set my cup down beside the console and glanced up at the main feed again. The fireplace, the box, the final sequence I had rewritten more times than I could count. Every camera angle was locked, every cue mapped, every variable accounted for, including the ones they didn't know existed. Behind me, someone laughed, nervous, too loud for the room, the kind of laugh that comes from people who know something important is about to happen, but don't know what shape it's going to take. I did. I had built this entire moment to hold exactly one thing: the truth. And in less than 20 minutes, I was going to let it out. To everyone on that set, I was an accessory, not even an important one. I was the man who stood slightly off to the side of Vanessa Hale Mercer, close enough to be recognized, never close enough to matter. The husband, the quiet one, the guy who didn't interrupt, didn't pitch ideas, didn't insert himself into conversations that were, apparently, above his pay grade. I had heard the way they talked about me when they thought I wasn't listening. Nice guy. Bit of a ghost. Does he even work in the industry? No one ever asked Vanessa directly. She never volunteered an answer. That silence did more work than any lie ever could. Vanessa had built her public identity carefully, sharp, composed, decisive. The executive who got things done. The woman who could take a production from chaos to clean delivery without breaking a sweat. She stood at podiums, sat on panels, gave interviews where she spoke about vision, leadership, instinct. None of those things were technically false. They just weren't hers. I watched her now through the glass of the control room, one hand resting lightly against the console, issuing instructions like she had authored the entire system. People leaned toward her when she spoke, adjusted themselves around her timing, treated her like the axis everything turned on. And maybe, in a way, she was. Just not in the way they believed. Because the show Glass Harbor wasn't something she had built. It wasn't something anyone in that room had built. It came from a name none of them had ever met. E.C. Vale. That was the name in the contracts, the name in the guild records, the name on the master file locked behind 3 layers of encryption that no one but me had access to. For 6 years, that name had been treated like a myth, reclusive, difficult, brilliant, untouchable. Studios had tried to find me. Networks had tried to court me. Journalists had built entire profiles out of speculation and secondhand quotes. I never corrected them because E.C. Vale wasn't a person to them. It was a force. And I preferred it that way. Glass Harbor had run for 5 seasons, 15 awards, 3 breakout careers, a licensing stream that had grown so aggressively my financial team had to restructure how the reports were even formatted. Every line of it had come from me. Every character arc, every piece of dialogue people quoted like scripture on Monday mornings, I had written it alone. Usually after midnight, in a house where my wife slept down the hall and had no idea what I was building. Vanessa knew I worked. She knew I had projects. She didn't know she was living inside one. I had kept it that way deliberately. Not out of insecurity, not out of fear, out of control. Because once people know where the power actually sits, they start negotiating with it, positioning around it, trying to take pieces of it. Anonymity removed that variable entirely. It let me watch, and I've always been better at watching than anyone around me has ever realized. For 6 years, that invisibility had worked perfectly until it didn't. Until the shift started. It wasn't loud, it never is. It was in the negative space first. The things Vanessa stopped doing, the questions she stopped asking, the way her attention once sharp, once precise began to drift somewhere I couldn't see yet. Most people miss that stage. They wait for something undeniable. I don't. I notice when patterns break, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. The shift didn't announce itself. It never does. It showed up in fragments small enough to ignore if you weren't paying attention, consistent enough to form a pattern if you were. Vanessa started angling her phone away from me when messages came in. Not dramatically, just a slight tilt. A reflex she probably didn't even realize she'd developed. Her schedule changed next, later nights. Early calls that didn't quite line up with production timelines. Meetings that ran long without producing anything tangible. I didn't ask. Not because I didn't care, because asking too early ruins the data. Instead, I watched, I cataloged, I let the pattern build until it stopped being deniable. There was a new rhythm to her absence, not physical absence, but attention. A specific kind of disengagement that doesn't come from exhaustion. It comes from reallocation. She wasn't withdrawing. She was investing somewhere else. The first time I saw Julian Cross step into that space, it was almost forgettable. A Thursday night rehearsal. Late. Crew running on caffeine and muscle memory. I was standing exactly where I usually stood off to the side, notebook in hand, invisible by design. Julian had just finished a run-through of the final scene. He hit his marks clean. Voice steady. Controlled. The kind of performance that makes people lean forward without realizing it. Vanessa approached him after the cut, too close. That was the first thing. Not inappropriate, not yet, but closer than necessary for a note. She said something low. Near his ear, he smiled. Not the public one he used on camera, but something smaller. Private, familiar. I felt it then. Not anger, stillness. The kind that settles in your chest when something you've been quietly suspecting finally confirms itself without needing words. I told myself it could be nothing. Professional overlap. Creative alignment. The kind of blurred boundary that happens in high-pressure productions. That was the reasonable explanation. It just wasn't the correct one. Over the next 2 weeks, the fragments became structure. I saw the way Julian started looking for her first when he walked onto set, the way her attention tracked him even when she was mid-conversation with someone else. The timing of their breaks began to align. The private conversations got longer, more frequent, more deliberate. I never confronted her. Not because I was unsure, because I was waiting. There's a difference between suspicion and proof. One creates emotion, the other creates leverage. And I don't move without leverage. Then came the detail that removed any remaining ambiguity. I was passing through the side corridor behind wardrobe when I heard her voice. Lower than usual. Stripped of the executive edge she used on set, soft, unstructured, real. I stopped just before the corner. Not enough to be seen, enough to hear. You need to stop looking at me like that out there, she said quietly. A pause. Julian's voice, amused. Then stop giving me reasons to. Another pause, closer this time. You're not subtle, she said. Neither are you. Silence. Not empty. Full. The kind that carries implication without needing to state it. That was the moment. Not when I felt hurt, when I knew. I didn't step forward. I didn't interrupt. I didn't make a sound. I turned, walked back the way I came, and filed it away exactly where it belonged. Not as betrayal, as confirmation, because once something becomes real, it stops being emotional, it becomes structural, and structures can be taken apart. The moment it broke wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was efficient. That Tuesday, everything was already moving at live show velocity, tight schedules, compressed tempers, the kind of pressure that strips people down to who they actually are. I arrived just after 2. Same place, same position, same invisibility. By then, I already knew what Vanessa and Julian were. What I didn't know, what I was about to find out, was how far they were willing to go with it. Tiffany in the original had made it theatrical. Julian didn't need to. He made it casual. Which was worse. He came out of wardrobe already in costume-tailored charcoal suit, open collar, every inch the version of himself I had designed for the audience. 2 assistants trailing him, someone adjusting his mic pack, another handing him notes he wouldn't read. He stopped when he saw me, not confused, not surprised, annoyed, like I was something left in his way. He looked me over once, quick, dismissive, then glanced toward the first AD. Who's this guy still doing on set, he asked, not bothering to lower his voice. The words didn't land hard, they landed clean, precise. The crew went quiet in that subtle way people do when they're pretending not to hear something they absolutely are. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because Vanessa was already walking toward us. This was the moment. The only one that mattered. She stopped beside him close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and didn't look at me first. She looked at him. A brief glance, familiar. Easy. Then she turned to me. No hesitation. Ethan, she said, tone flat, professional. Stripped of anything personal. You shouldn't be back here during technical. Not, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here now. A correction, a removal. Julian exhaled a quiet laugh beside her. Yeah. We're about to run final blocking. Can we clear whatever this is? Whatever this is, that's what I was. I could feel the eyes around us. Crew members pretending to adjust cables. Someone flipping through a clipboard that hadn't changed pages in 10 seconds. Waiting. Watching. Vanessa didn't defend me. Didn't hesitate. She placed her hand lightly against Julian's chest, just for a second. A grounding touch, but not one meant for me. I've got it, she said to him. Softer now. Then back to me. Go wait in the car, she said. You're distracting the talent. The talent. The phrase sat in the air like something rehearsed. Not spontaneous. Practiced. She stepped closer, not aggressively. Just enough to lower her voice. Leave your badge at the front desk when you go, she added. I'll have your things sent over later. Your things. Not our. Not home. Administrative language. Clean. Detachable. Final. 11 years, reduced to logistics. I looked at her. Really looked. And in that moment, I understood something with absolute clarity. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a mistake. This was a decision she had already made. Julian shifted slightly beside her. Comfortable. Like he belonged there. Like I didn't. I nodded once. No scene. No raised voice. No attempt to reclaim anything in front of people who had already decided what role I played. I turned and walked. The set stayed quiet behind me, not silent, but muted. Like sound itself had stepped back to watch. I passed craft services on the way out. Vanessa's phone was sitting on the edge of the table. Screen lit. I didn't stop. Didn't need to. I read it in motion. One glance. That was enough. Can't wait for tonight. When are you finally cutting him loose? I want to start moving into the place tomorrow. The place, I slowed, just slightly. Not enough for anyone to notice, but enough for the words to settle. Because I knew exactly which place he meant. And in that moment everything shifted, not emotionally. Structurally, I pushed through the exit doors into the late afternoon sun. And for the first time that day, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was planning. The message stayed with me the entire drive. Not the tone, not the betrayal, the assumption, the place. He said it like it was already his, like Vanessa had already handed it over, like I wasn't part of that equation anymore. That was the detail that mattered, because I knew exactly which property he was talking about. A 2-story glass penthouse in downtown LA. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Private elevator access. Purchased 6 weeks earlier through one of my holding companies. An acquisition I had mentioned casually over dinner. An investment opportunity. Vanessa had nodded. Asked a few surface-level questions. Lost interest halfway through my explanation. Or so I thought. Now I understood. She hadn't lost interest, she had repurposed it. I parked in the underground garage of Pike and Row Legal at 3:52 p.m. and went straight up without calling ahead. Adrian Pike didn't like surprises. That's how I knew he understood their value. His office sat on the 44th floor, glass, steel. Controlled silence. The kind of place where decisions carried weight before they were even spoken. He looked up when I walked in. Didn't ask why. Just closed the file in front of him and gestured to the chair. 12 minutes, I said. That's generous, he replied. I laid it out clean, no emotion, no speculation, just sequence. Vanessa. Julian. The set, the message, the penthouse. Then I slid the folder across his desk. He opened it. Started reading. Didn't interrupt. That was the tell. Adrian interrupts everything. When he doesn't, it means he's recalculating. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. Fingers steepled. Eyes still on the documents. Prenup holds, he said finally. Fidelity clause is airtight. If we demonstrate infidelity and, from what you've just described, that won't be difficult. She walks with what she came in with. Which was almost nothing. Vanessa had built her public identity on proximity to success, not ownership of it. There's more, I said. He glanced up. I opened the second folder. Forensic audit. Quiet. Last 3 weeks. He flipped to the first page, then the second. Then stopped. Not dramatically, just paused. How much, he asked. 387,000, I said. Over 8 months. Split across vendor inflation, discretionary production expenses, and direct account redirection. He looked at me. Really looked this time. That's not sloppiness, he said. No. I agreed. It's entitlement. He nodded once. Wire fraud. Corporate embezzlement. Both clean, both provable. He tapped the page lightly. She didn't even try to bury it properly. She didn't think she had to. Adrian allowed himself the smallest shift in expression. Not quite a smile. Recognition. All right, he said. How do you want to proceed? I turned my chair slightly toward the wall-mounted monitor. A live internal feed from Soundstage 7. Julian was on screen, running the final sequence, moving toward the fireplace, toward the box. Exactly where I had written him to go. Serve them tonight, I said. Adrian didn't respond immediately. Not because he didn't understand, because he was evaluating scale. Public, he asked. Yes. On the broadcast. That got his full attention. That's aggressive. It's precise. A beat. Then, how the box, I said. His eyes flicked back to the screen. Understanding landed, not all at once, but enough. Eviction notice, I continued. For the penthouse, effective immediately. 24 hours to vacate, he nodded slowly. And the divorce executed, filed, ready for delivery. Another pause. Timing, he asked. Climax of the final scene, I said. When he opens it, Adrian exhaled through his nose, not disapproval. Respect. That's clean, he said quietly. I stood. Buttoned my jacket. One more thing. He picked up his pen again. The security team on set tonight runs through Meridian Holdings. He checked his notes. Then looked up. Which you own? Yes. So operational control is mine. I met his eyes. Make sure the process server coordinates with the west entrance guard. Names, Marcus Vale. He's expecting instruction. Adrian wrote that down without comment. Then glanced back at me as I reached the door. You've been preparing this longer than today, he said. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because the truth was, I hadn't been preparing for this specific moment. I had been preparing for the possibility of it. For years. I stepped out of his office at 4:18 p.m. Sat in my car. Opened my laptop. 3 layers of encryption. Biometrics. Passphrase. The master file loaded. Glass Harbor. Season 5, finale. 48 pages of narrative precision, 7 months of writing, and at the center of it Julian's monologue. 12 minutes. Career defining. Legacy making. I scrolled to it, read the first line, then the second, then stopped. My hand hovered over the keyboard, not shaking, still. I selected the entire section. Every word. Every pause. Every breath I had built for him. And I deleted it. The screen went white. Empty. Clean. I typed a single line. The truth is delivered. Saved. Locked. Pushed live to the broadcast server. Then, I opened a secure channel. Routed it through 2 proxy layers, sent instructions to Noah Bennett and the prop master. Clear, direct, unambiguous. The box arrives sealed. It is not opened before airtime. The reaction is real. The version that airs is the final version. I closed the laptop, started the engine, and drove back to the studio. By the time I stepped inside again, everything was already in motion. By the time I got back to the studio, the atmosphere had shifted, not visibly, but if you've spent enough years inside systems like this, you feel it. The compression before impact. Soundstage 7 was fully lit now. The soft rehearsal haze was gone, replaced by sharp, deliberate lighting, every shadow controlled, every surface intentional. The set didn't look like a place anymore. It looked like a moment waiting to happen. I moved through it without being stopped. No one questioned me. Not because I belonged, because I had never given them a reason not to let me pass. Invisibility has a memory. Once people file you as irrelevant, they rarely revisit the decision. I stepped into the control room at 7:12 p.m., same corner, same position, different outcome. The monitors were alive, multi-angle feeds, waveform displays, cue timers ticking down in red digits, voices overlapped in clipped bursts. Check camera 2. Audio is hot. Standby talent. Noah Bennett stood at the center console. Headset on, eyes locked forward. He was one of the few people in this building who understood precision as something sacred. Which is why I trusted him. Even if he didn't know he was following my instructions. The prop master confirmed delivery at 7:28. Boxes on set. Someone called out. Locked. Noah asked. Locked. Untouched. Untouched. Good. I watched the primary monitor, the fireplace, the mantle, the box. It sat there exactly where it was supposed to, ornate, deliberate, unremarkable to anyone who didn't know what it contained, which was everyone. Behind me, the room filled. Executives, producers, network observers, the kind of people who only show up when something important is about to validate their importance. At 7:41, Vanessa walked in, headset, tailored suit, composed. She moved like the room belonged to her. People adjusted when she passed, gave her space, deferred without thinking. She was very good at this. I had made sure of it. A few seconds later, Julian appeared on the monitors. Final wardrobe. Final position. Final version of the man I had constructed. He looked exactly like the story required. Confident, centered, untouchable. I studied him for a moment. Not with anger, with accuracy. Then, I looked back at the box, because that was the only part that mattered now. The mechanism was set. Script altered, legal documents in place, security aligned, timing locked. There was nothing left to improvise. That's the difference between reaction and design. One hopes for an outcome, the other ensures it. 10 minutes, Noah called out. The room tightened, voices dropped, movements became sharper. I stood still, completely still, not waiting, not anticipating, just ready. Because I knew something no one else in that room understood yet. They thought they were about to broadcast a finale. They weren't. They were about to witness a correction. And all it was going to take was one line. Stand by. Noah's voice cut clean through the control room. 5, 4, 3. Silence snapped into place. 2. And live. The monitors shifted in perfect sync. Soundstage 7 bloomed into cinematic light. Glass Harbor's final scene unfolded exactly as written, exactly as it had always been meant to, right up until the moment it wasn't. The first 8 minutes were flawless. Julian moved through them like he'd been built for it. Every beat landed. Every pause carried weight. His voice sat perfectly in the space, low, controlled, drawing the audience in exactly where I had intended. The room around me relaxed, just slightly. That dangerous kind of confidence that creeps in when people think they're watching something go right. Vanessa stood at the console, arms folded, chin slightly lifted. Pride, not subtle, earned. In her mind, I watched her for a second. Then I looked back at the screen, because this part wasn't hers anymore. On screen, Julian crossed the room. 1 step. 2. The camera followed him in a slow, deliberate push. The fireplace came into frame. The box sat on the mantel, exactly where it had always been. 30 seconds to final beat. Someone called out. Julian reached the steps, paused. Let the moment breathe. He was good. Even now. He lifted his hand, placed it on the lid. I felt the entire room lean forward. 10 million people doing the same thing somewhere else. Waiting, expecting, trusting the story to deliver what it had promised. He flipped the latch. The click was audible. Sharp, clean, irreversible. The lid opened. Julian looked down. And everything broke. It wasn't immediate, not in the way people expect. It started in his eyes. A flicker, confusion first, then recognition. Then something deeper. Something real. The performance disappeared. Completely. His face lost structure, lost the careful control he'd spent years building. Color drained, his mouth parted slightly, like he'd forgotten what he was supposed to say next. Because he had. There was nothing left to say. His hand moved into the box. Slow. Uncertain. He pulled out the folder. Thick. Official. Stamped. Visible. What his voice cracked, not the scripted kind, the real one. What is this? In the control room. Everything fractured. Noah, he's off script. Cut to camera 2 now, I can't. We're locked. Who locked? Noise. Panic. Irrelevant. Because the moment had already escaped them. I stood. Walked to the door. Opened it. And stepped onto the stage. The heat hit first lights, sound, presence, then silence. Not total. But heavy. The kind that settles when something happens no one has been trained to react to. My footsteps echoed across the concrete. 1, 2, 3. I stepped into the light. Julian looked up, saw me. And for the first time since I had known him, he didn't recognize the version of me he thought existed. Cut, I said, the word carried. Not loud, not forced. Just final. It moved through the space like something inevitable. Julian took a step back. The folder slipped from his hand. Papers spilled across the floor, clean white sheets against dark concrete. Legal text. Black ink. Unmistakable. What are you doing? He said, voice thin now. This isn't part of. The scene is over, I said. I walked toward him. Measured. Unhurried. Because pacing matters. Especially when everything else is collapsing. I stopped a few feet away. Close enough. Not closer than necessary. That, I said, nodding toward the papers, is an eviction notice. He stared at me, blank, processing. For the penthouse you were planning to move into tomorrow, I continued. The one you don't own, a beat. My company does. The audience made a sound, low, confused, layered. Julian's eyes flicked down to the documents. Then back to me. This is a joke, he said. No, I said, it's timing. I crouched slightly, picked up the second folder, and held it just enough for the camera to catch. Under that, I added, are divorce papers. That landed, not on him, behind him, Vanessa. I didn't need to look to know she'd gone still. Filed, executed, enforceable, I said, fidelity clause included. Now I turned. Faced the room, the cameras, the crew, every person who had ever stood in this space believing they understood who was in charge. For anyone confused about what's happening, I said, voice steady, carrying easily through the live mics, my name is Ethan Mercer. A pause. Just enough. I am E.C. Vale. It hit. You could feel it move through the room like a pressure shift, understanding catching up all at once. I built this show, I continued. Every line, every character, every decision that put us here tonight. I glanced at Julian. Then at Vanessa. And effective immediately, I said. The lead role you were just playing? I let that hang for half a second. Timing has been written out. The control room erupted behind the glass. Voices overlapping. Too late. Vanessa moved then. Fast, crossing the stage in sharp, controlled steps that almost looked like authority. Ethan, she started. Low, urgent. We need to. This is not how. I didn't let her finish. You're done, I said. No volume, no anger, just fact. Her expression cracked. Not dramatically. Just enough. That was all it took. Julian stepped back again, looking between us like the ground had disappeared under him. This is insane, he said. You can't just. I already did. He turned, instinctively, like he was looking for someone to override me. Security stepped in first. Marcus Vale moved from stage right, calm, precise, unhurried. He positioned himself between Julian and the exit, then reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope, held it out. Mr. Cross, he said evenly. Voice clear on every microphone. You've been served. Julian didn't take it. Marcus placed it against his chest anyway. Notice of civil action, he continued, and a formal statement of removal from the production. Behind him, 2 more guards stepped forward. Vanessa stared at me, really stared, like she was trying to reconcile 2 versions of reality that no longer matched. You knew, she said quietly. Not a question. I met her eyes. Yes. That was all. The broadcast feed cut seconds later. But it didn't matter. The moment had already gone everywhere it needed to. Because the truth once delivered doesn't wait for permission to spread. The fallout didn't take hours. It took minutes. By the time the network cut the feed, the clip was already moving, fragmented, reposted, dissected in real time. Someone in the control room had captured it. Someone always does, within the first hour. It had a name. The box incident. By midnight, it was everywhere. Morning shows, legal panels, industry breakdowns. People who had never watched a single episode of Glass Harbor suddenly had very strong opinions about authorship, power, and what happens when you mistake proximity for ownership. I didn't watch most of it. I didn't need to. I already knew how the story would land. Julian's agency dropped him within 48 hours. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a statement brief. Clinical? Final. His endorsement deals followed. Contracts dissolved. Calls stopped coming. The industry doesn't punish scandals, it punishes instability, and he had become radioactive overnight. Vanessa held on a little longer. 3 days, that's how long it took for the internal audit to go public. The numbers were clean, traceable, indisputable. $387,000, reclassified expenses, inflated vendor contracts, direct transfers that didn't survive even basic scrutiny once someone bothered to look. Her legal team lasted a week, then they started negotiating. The prenup did exactly what it was designed to do. She walked away with what she brought into the marriage, which was almost nothing. The penthouse was cleared within 24 hours. I didn't go there. I didn't need to see it empty to understand what it meant. Julian avoided charges. Vanessa didn't. 4 counts tied to financial misconduct. Enough to end a career. Enough to redraw a life. I moved into her office the following Monday. Not ceremonially, practically. The space had always been inefficient, heavy furniture, dark finishes, more about presence than function. I had it cleared out in 2 days. Rebuilt it clean, glass, light. Space that didn't try to impress anyone. My new assistant started that same week. Clara Reyes. 24. Quiet. Sharp. The kind of mind that doesn't waste words and doesn't miss structure. She had been rewriting notes in the margins of scripts no one thought she understood. I read one of them, then I hired her. Then I doubled her salary. Say what you think, I told her on day 1. I am, she said. Good. We rebuilt the finale, not as a correction, as an evolution. Eliminated the dependency on a single character. Shifted the narrative center. Let the story stand on its architecture instead of a face. It aired 6 weeks later. And it worked. Better than before. 3 Emmys. 1 for writing. That one mattered. 6 months after the broadcast, I stood outside the Microsoft Theater, under a sky that smelled like rain and money, for the first time. Both names were on the marquee. Ethan Mercer, E.C. Vale. No separation, no distance, no myth. Just accurate. The cameras were relentless, light flashing in controlled bursts, voices calling from every direction. Ethan, over here. Smile, just one more. I didn't look away. Didn't step back. I had spent too many years letting other people occupy the space I had built. That wasn't happening again. Across the street, there was a diner. Old. Neon flickering. The kind of place that survives by not changing. A woman stepped out to wipe down the outdoor tables, cap low. Posture different. But I recognized her. Vanessa, for a second. I just watched, not with anger, not with satisfaction, with distance. This wasn't the part of the story that mattered anymore. What mattered was what came after. I turned back toward the theater, toward the lights, toward the thing that had always been mine. Even when I pretended it wasn't, I thought about the man I had been on that set, standing in the shadows, letting people believe I was smaller than I was, telling myself it was control, telling myself it was strategy. Some of it had been. Some of it hadn't. There's a difference between choosing silence and disappearing inside it. I don't make that mistake anymore. In this industry, everyone fights to be seen. They chase the camera, the spotlight, the version of power that looks loud from the outside. They're wrong. Power isn't where the light is. It's where the decisions are made. It's in the structure, the authorship, the quiet control over what happens next. It's knowing exactly when to step in and when to say cut. I walked forward as my name was called, not the careful version, not the one that asked for less space than it deserved. This time, I took it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Fish Tells Stories for more high-impact drama like this. This content is created by the Fish Tells Stories team for entertainment purposes only. Do not imitate or apply in real life under any circumstances.